Association. Amount due, $30,000. Reason, unauthorized construction. Thing is, my cabin wasn't even on their land. Not by a foot, not by a fence post, not even close. It stood 847 feet outside their jurisdiction line, on property that had been in my family for decades. But that didn't stop them. See, the Summerview HOA had a president, Claudia Whitmore, a woman who wore power like perfume and believed her clipboard could bend the law. She was the kind of person who could smile while cutting your legs out from under you, all in the name of community standards. My name's Jack Mercer, 52 years old, retired electrician, widower, builder of one small dream cabin, and, apparently, accidental revolutionary. When my wife Helen passed from breast cancer, I thought grief would come like a wave, heavy, violent, but temporary. Instead, it came like fog, quiet, endless. I wandered our beige-walled home in Summerview Estates, a place where every lawn. Us $50 for a visual disruption. I laughed when it happened. Helen didn't. After she was gone, I couldn't stand that sameness anymore. The silence, the fake smiles, the sound of leaf blowers. It wasn't much, a few pine stands, a creek, and enough open sky to make a man feel small again. So I packed my tools, drove north, and built something with my hands, something Helen would have called honest. I did everything by the book. Pulled every county permit, structural, electrical, septic. Cost me an extra $300, but it meant I could sleep at night. I even nailed the bright yellow permit to a pine tree like a badge of honor. 3 months later, the cabin was nearly done, rough edges smoothed, windows trimmed, generator humming softly. That's when I heard tires crunching over gravel. A white Lexus RX rolled up, gleaming like a threat. Out stepped Claudia Whitmore, 5'8" of tailored authority, heels stabbing into the dirt like she was punishing. Tree. All county approved, ma'am. Her smile twitched. County permits are one thing. HOA approval is quite another. I nearly laughed. Ma'am, we're 800 feet outside your neighborhood. Sign. She just nodded slowly. We'll be in touch. And oh, she was. 2 weeks later, a certified letter arrived. $30,000 fine. The words, ignorance of covenants is no excuse, printed like a sermon. That was the moment I realized something about people like Claudia. They count on you being too tired to fight. Too small. Too polite. They counted wrong. I called her. Claudia, I think there's been a mistake. The cabin's on Silver Ridge property, not Summerview. A long pause, paper shuffling on the other end. Our legal counsel has reviewed the situation, Mr. Mercer. She said, that fake sweet HR voice sliding through the receiver. Our jurisdiction extends to all properties under member ownership, regardless of location. The fine stands. Have a wonderful day. Click. I stared at the phone like it had just insulted my mother. Within a week, I learned what HOA warfare looks like. Code enforcement officers appeared. Anonymous complaints were filed, and my mailbox filled with letters stamped violation notice. Apparently, my driveway gravel was non-compliant. My truck was now a commercial vehicle. My fence, too rustic. Every paper cut came. Games, I'd play harder. The next morning, I drove to the Jefferson County Courthouse. The place smelled like coffee and mildew. The scent of democracy, I guess. After hours of squinting at old maps, deeds, and incorporation records, I found it. Summerview Estates, HOA, incorporated April 2009. Silver Ridge Parcel 17, deeded to Ray Mercer, January 1994. 15 years apart. 12, subsection C, 4 of their own covenants. The association's authority shall extend solely to properties within the platted boundaries as recorded with Jefferson County. It was there. They all think property lines are suggestions. 3 hours later, his GPS confirmed it. 847 feet outside HOA control. I mailed certified copies to every board member, along with a polite letter, requesting an apology. Their response: surveyor error. Fine stands. That's when I stopped being polite. Claudia wasn't just a control freak. She was a tyrant with a newsletter. Suddenly, neighbors I'd known for years started whispering. Someone even posted online that I was unstable after Helen's passing. Then one morning, Claudia herself showed up, clipboard in hand. Harder than it needs to be. No, I said, you are. That night, I barely slept. My anger had crystallized into purpose. I didn't just want the fine gone. I wanted the truth exposed. Have to file annual financial reports with the state. And when I got my hands on some reviews, something stank worse than the septic tank I'd just installed. Out of $180,000 in annual homeowner dues, nearly $50,000 went to legal expenses. That's a quarter of their budget. For a neighborhood where the biggest controversy used to be Christmas lights. And the cherry on top? Payments totaling $68,000 over 18 months to a law firm called Whitmore and Klein LLP, the same firm run by Claudia's cousin. It wasn't enforcement, it was a racket. I started knocking on, turning covenant enforcement into her personal ATM. So, I filed a complaint with the Colorado Department of Regulatory Agencies, attaching every document I'd found. Then I mailed every homeowner a summary of those same documents, because sunlight, as they say, is the best disinfectant. 3 days later, Claudia's response came in the form of another certified letter, this one accusing me of defamation and harassment. But fear? It was gone, because now, the neighborhood was waking up. A retired teacher named Josephine Carter called me that evening. Her late husband had been the HOA treasurer before Claudia took over. She said he'd noticed irregularities before his stroke. "I've got boxes," she whispered. "Receipts, bank statements, all of it." That's when I knew the storm was coming. The emergency HOA meeting notice arrived the next morning. Bold letters, underlined, urgent community safety concerns. The agenda: harassment by rogue members, that's me. Special assessment for legal defense. Suspension of privileges for disruptive individuals. In other words, a public execution. But what she didn't realize was that the crowd had already turned. I spent 3 nights preparing, building poster boards with maps, records, financial statements. Rick helped with the boundary charts. Josephine showed up carrying her late husband's files like Holy Scripture. Thursday night, the community center was packed. Claudia stood at the front in her navy blazer, the picture of authority. "Thank you all for coming," she began, voice dripping with. Unfolding my map. "Maybe you could explain why your jurisdiction ends here, at Maple Drive, and my cabin sits right here, 847 feet beyond." The room murmured. Eyes turned toward Claudia. "Well," she started, "property lines are complex legal instruments." "Not really," said a gravelly voice from the back. Rick Morton, waving a rolled survey. "They're literally lines on a map. And his land predates your HOA by 15 years. You could feel the air change. Then Martha Jenkins raised her hand. "If he's not under HOA authority, why did you fine him?" Claudia's jaw tightened. "To maintain community standards." "Or," I said, "to fund your cousin's law firm." Gasps. And that's when Josephine Carter walked up, carrying a cardboard box and more courage than the rest of us combined. "My husband kept every record," she said softly. "Bank statements, checks, invoices, even the ones you try to make. Claudia's home address." Josephine laid them on the table one by one, her hands steady. Harold calculated $46,000 in unaccounted expenses. "I think you owe this community an explanation." For once, Claudia had no words. And for the first time in years, the room didn't feel afraid of her. That night, we met at Josephine's living room, 23 homeowners, coffee, files, determination. Rick brought his maps, I brought my documentation, and Josephine brought history. We formed a plan, Operation Accountability. Our goals: file complaints with the state attorney general and county DA, audit every HOA expenditure from the last 5 years, freeze Claudia's accounts through emergency injunction, and, if necessary, take her to court ourselves. We weren't just fighting for my cabin anymore. We were fighting for every homeowner who'd ever been bullied by a clipboard queen with too much power and too little conscience. By dawn, we had enough evidence to make a prosecutor salivate: embezzlement, fraud, abuse of fiduciary duty. But Claudia wasn't done yet. She had one last weapon: reputation warfare. Within a week, glossy flyers appeared on car windshields accusing me of being unstable and a danger to neighbors. Facebook posts popped up from fake profiles warning about a widower with anger issues, threatening board members. But the timing was too perfect, the language too polished. Rick traced one of the profile photos. It belonged to a stock image model from Iowa. We had her digital fingerprints. And as we connected the dots, the shell companies, the inflated legal bills, the money trails, something bigger started to take shape. This wasn't just one corrupt president. Thunderstorm. Neighbors who had avoided eye contact for years were now whispering over coffee, comparing finds, swapping stories. The fear that had kept everyone in line for so long was cracking. Word from your HOA president. It painted me as a rogue agitator, spreading dangerous misinformation and inciting hostility against our community leadership. She signed it with her signature. Looping flourish, as if that alone could rewrite reality. Then came the escalation. The smear campaign. First, there were the flyers, full color, expensive, slid under windshields and taped to mailboxes. Beware of Jack Mercer. Unstable widower threatens HOA safety. Protect your neighborhood from harassment. Each one carefully worded, never quite libel, but all venom. Then came the fake Facebook accounts. Concerned Summerview Mom. Protect our homes. Real Residents United. They posted photos of me hauling lumber, twisting them into paranoid rants about illegal construction in protected woodland. It was pure psychological warfare, and if it had been 2 months earlier, it might have worked. But not this time. Because this time, the community had receipts. The numbers didn't just sing, they screamed. Maintenance contracts inflated by 40%. Payments to fake vendors. Consulting fees routed through Summerview Property Management LLC. That fake company tied to Claudia's home address. And then came the connection that made our jaws drop. Several payments made from Summerview's account to 2 other HOAs in Jefferson County. Network. That's when we realized we weren't fighting an HOA. We were dismantling an empire. The setup. Friday afternoon, Claudia called an emergency meeting. The agenda? Community defense against defamation. Translation. A vote to slap every homeowner with a $2,500 special assessment to fund her legal fight. But the timing gave us a window, 1 weekend to turn the tide. We printed flyers. Of our own. Where is your money going? We listed the missing funds, the fake companies, the law firm kickbacks. By Monday evening, the community center was overflowing. The usual crowd of nervous. Thank you all for attending, she began. There has been a great deal of misinformation circulating recently. Yeah, someone shouted from the back. And most of it came from you. The room erupted in murmurs. She tried to continue, but I stepped forward. Before you start, Claudia, maybe you can explain why this payment. I held up a printed bank statement, went to A. Claudia's grip on the podium tightened. Then the door opened, and in walked Deputy Sam Hernandez from the sheriff's office, uniform crisp, a folder in hand. He didn't say a word, just stood by the shouted, "What about the playground fund?" That did it. For 3 years, parents had been paying into a fund for a new playground that never appeared. Claudia stammered something about contractor delays, but before she could finish, Josephine stepped forward with a folder labeled Playground Allocations 2019 to 2022. Inside were checks written to non-existent vendors. The room fell silent. You could hear the rain tapping against the windows. And then Josephine, voice steady but trembling with decades of restrained fury, said, "My husband tried to stop this before he died." Video. Security footage. Claudia, at night, crouched beside my generator, crowbar in hand. The video froze on her face as she realized she'd been caught. "Is that you?" I asked, my voice carrying. Across the room. Her expression collapsed like wet plaster. She tried to grab her bag, muttering something about malicious editing. But before she could reach the door, Deputy Hernandez stepped forward. "Ms. Whitmore," he said calmly, "I think it's time we had a conversation downtown." She froze, color draining from her face. "You can't. This is harassment." He held up the warrant. "Grand theft, fraud, embezzlement, and vandalism. You have the right to remain silent." The crowd gasped as he cuffed her right there, under the fluorescent lights of the community center. The same people who once feared her now applauded as she was led out in disbelief. For the first time in years, Summerview Estates felt alive. The fallout. News travels fast when justice finally arrives. Within hours, the story hit local media. HOA president arrested for embezzlement. Community uncovers $180,000 fraud scheme. By the weekend, it had spread statewide. Reporters camped at the subdivision entrance like it was a crime scene, which, in a way, it was. Channel 7 called it the suburban uprising. The Denver Post ran a Sunday feature titled The HOA That Fought Back, Rebellion Against Control. But the real story was what came after. The federal investigation. The county DA contacted us first, then the FBI's white-collar crime division. Turns out our discovery. 17 warrants. 6 arrests. Over $2 million in stolen funds recovered. When Special Agent Rebecca Torres briefed us at the follow-up meeting, she said something that stuck with me. People think corruption lives in dark alleys. Truth is, it thrives behind white picket fences. And she was right. The restoration. 6 months later, Summerview Estates was unrecognizable and productive. We implemented a new charter, the Summerview Transparency Pact, requiring monthly financial reports shared publicly. Homeowner votes for any legal expense over $500. Annual. Third-party audits. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. And as for the stolen funds, the courts ordered full restitution. Over $240,000 returned to our community. Enough to pay off bogus fines. Board issued a formal apology. The $30,000 fine against Mr. Jack Mercer is hereby voided and declared unlawful. They didn't need to apologize. I already had what I wanted, vindication. The cabin stood untouched, legal as ever. But it had become more than a project. It was a monument to resistance, proof that a single voice, if armed with truth, could crack an empire of lies. Laughed at the madness of it all. How a simple cabin had triggered an FBI investigation, toppled a corrupt board, and sparked reform laws across the state. Because yes, it went that far. The Colorado legislature passed the Summerview Reform Act, mandating transparency in HOA finances, whistleblower protections, and term limits for board members. Other states followed. Our little rebellion had rippled across the country. Epilogue, the new beginning. A year later, I co-founded Boundary Line Solutions with Rick Morton, helping homeowners fight back against corrupt neighbors who believe in it. Josephine Carter, now 79, became our moral compass, the face of reform. Local news called her the grandma who took down an HOA. She laughed every time. But behind the humor, there was pride and peace. One afternoon, we gathered at the playground for a small ceremony, unveiling a bronze plaque with Harold's name. As the kids played, and now, every morning, when I sip coffee on that porch, I think about how it all began. One letter, one lie, one fight I never asked for. And I wonder, how many other neighborhoods are living under their own Claudias? How many good people stay silent, thinking it's not worth the trouble to stand up? Because here's the truth I learned the hard way. Bullies thrive on apathy, not power. Or would you fight? Because sometimes, doing what's right isn't just about saving your home. It's about saving everyone else's.